Hello, once again, here we are. Oh, gotta turn the radio off, sorry. Okay, here's another video that I'm gonna do. Just let me get comfortable. So what's this video gonna be about? It's gonna be about racism and whether or not we can develop a curriculum to not explain away racism in a sterilized environment of political correctness. Because I honestly believe that every wound has to have a pussy part. Well, before it starts to heal. There's a swelling that needs to happen. There's a desire to heal without going through the pain of healing. And there's a lot of people in the world that do this. And it's like they ignore the issues. And we're right now ignoring the reality of racism and how it affects us globally, how it affects us nationwide, how it affects the way we feel about human compassion towards each other. So, okay, first, I talked in the previous video about the police in the New World and stuff like that, about racism being humanity stressed out by the speed of light. So I'm going to touch on it again. Basically, light travels at 300 million meters per second. I don't know if that's wave of photons. I don't know how it is, but it's traveling very fast. And we spend our days calculating colors. Like, for example, this is blue. This is greenish blue or turquoise. This is pink. And this is yellow. I'll give you another example. This ball here, this silly face, is yellow. As you can see, it's a silly face, eh? We're calculating this right now. We're looking at this ball right now, and we're calculating its occupation of space. Now, what's happening is light is coming in the visual light spectrum. That's red, yellow, purple, all the colors. And what's happening is light is hitting this yellow ball, and the gravity of this ball is reflecting the yellow light in the visual light spectrum to meet the optics of our eyes, or the observation of our eyes. So the gravity of this ball is bending light. It's reflecting light, so I guess it's bending light. I don't know if it can be said any other way. It's bending the yellow light in the visual light spectrum. So blue, red, orange, green is all being absorbed into this ball. So if we're calculating all the time the speed of light, when it comes to the hue of the human flesh, there are 4 groups. And I think that this is it's a hat. There's the Asian, there's the European, there's the African, there's the First Nation. Now, that's racially speaking. Nationwide, it's completely different. So, as you look at this, for the red group, there would be Arapaho, Cherokee, Apache, Cheyenne, Algonquin, Dene, Tsutana, Northern Cree, Plains Cree, Peguis. There's so many different people to be represented in the red race of First Nations people of America. With yellow, there's Taiwanese, there's Malaysian, there's Filipino, there's Chinese, there's Mon, there's Japanese, there's Korean. There's a lot of different people when it's associated to the yellow race card or color. Africa, Congo, Morocco, Ghana, Mali, Chad, Niger, South Sudan, North Sudan, Somalia. So it's not just a black person. It's in the medicine world, there's people for every uh, race that has a different nationality, has a different fashion statement even. So with the Europeans, there's German, French, Polish, Scottish, Welsh, Portuguese, all these different people. Now the thing is that what needs to be considered is these people, these races of people, we're not just black, we're not just white, we're not just red, we're not just yellow. They had different fashion statements that polarized them as a nation or a tribe or a clan or a group of people. So the Goths or the Visigoths or the Celts or the Picts or the Arapaho and the Cherokee, they had different fashion statements. They had different ways of expressing their fashions. So in North America, it's about the color of a person and their racial identity. Sure, there's the melting pot, and in Canada, there's the mosaic, and Sikhs are Sikhs, and Hindus are Hindus, and Germans are Germans, and Poles are Poles, and Danes are Danes, and First Nations are all these different people. Sure that, but when it comes to racism, people don't take the time to get to know if somebody is an Algonquin. They might say Indian. Or they won't take the time to get to know if someone's Blackfoot. They'll just say Indian. So when they're dealing with a white person um, that is Scottish, like I'm Scottish, Welsh, Portuguese, and Beothic, um, you look at me and you say I'm a white person. But if you take the time to get to know me, you'll find out that I'm a Newfie first before I'm a white person. And it's like if I get to know an Ojibwe person, do I call them a native or an Indian? Or do I get to know the Ojibwe person and learn words like Miigwech and Anishinaabe and other words? So what I'm trying to express is that if I look at somebody in the light and I say there's a um, a negative experience that happens, and I go, oh, that slant eye, or or an Asian person goes, oh, that wide eye, or an African person goes, that honky, that redneck, or all these words that are used when something is negative and negatively experienced in the light. So if we're constantly calculating the hue of flesh, or if we're constantly calculating at work our keyboards or light switches, or navigating to wipe our sphincter while taking a washroom break. I know that's a little dirty, but everybody does it, and there is a stress involved with doing it. If you're not eating right, you may suffer. But what am where does that come from, John? What I'm trying to express is we cannot abandon our kids to words to use because they're too late. Not that they're too lazy, they're taught to be ignorant towards the labor that's required in getting to know people from differing parts of the world. And the thing is if we abandon our kids to continue to perpetuate racism by using racial slurs or not being patient enough to get to know people, um, what ends up happening is that you have an inner dialogue that's not talked about. And if it is talked about, people tend to polarize into hate groups. And if they polarize into hate groups, that might be black power, that might be white power, that might be the red power or Asian power. If people say, for example, I was talking with this guy that works with multi-nationalistic, racialistic people. And I said, it's a stress, and everybody has an inner dialogue. I even have an inner dialogue. Is this person that I'm coming into contact with going to hate me because I'm white? And there's a stress that happens when that type of thinking happens in the human body. So if I'm like making a joke out of everything when it comes to race, and I don't consider that it hurts somebody's feelings, then I'm being inconsiderate. So we have people in this world that are like, I'll never get anywhere because I don't have white privilege. I'll never get anywhere because I don't have this. I haven't given into the system. Um, a lot of people, they don't need to give into the system to be who they are. And we need to start providing education, like, for example, KRS-One in the Temple of Hip Hop. A lot of people become doctors or nurses or lawyers, and they ignore the Temple of Hip Hop. With First Nations people, they become all these other things like lawyers and doctors and stuff like that, and they forget about First Nation culture and First Nation intelligence and First Nation logic and First Nation psychology and First Nation um, uh, um, agriculture, First Nations astrology. There's so much that needs to be considered when it comes to First Nations people. If Asian people are not losing their culture, but are becoming doctors and stuff like that in the Western world, are they losing um, acupuncture heritage or qigong or kung fu type tai chis and stuff like that? What I'm trying to express is the inner dialogue may contribute to many social anxieties. So we have all these people walking around with these social anxieties, thinking, like, for example, I wonder what this person will think of me if I give them a gift from their native land. Um, like, will they like me? Am I doing it for them to like me so I can say that I'm a worldly person? Like, this is some of the anxieties that I have. Like, I have a friend right now I just phoned, and we had some conversations, very passionate conversations, and I'm worried that I might have offended him. Um, it's an anxiety that I have where I want to be friends, but there's a lot of people in the world right now that are not developing nations. We're not nation building like we should be as Canadians and Americans. And a lot of people think, oh, well, just leave them alone, let them do it themselves. People's lives matter, regardless of how successful something is. Um, People need help, and I don't know, love your neighbor as yourself. Isn't that the Christian utopic socialism and Christian hospitality? Isn't that what it's supposed to be like? Or is it, let's kill those native devils because they've proven that they have a spirituality and that the earth is no longer flat, it's round. So we're going to experience mass cognitive dissonance and kill millions of First Nations people. Unacceptable. Unacceptable as whatever. Can we isolate a curriculum? Can we isolate a curriculum that everybody can jump on board with? Not everybody as it's associated to color, but everybody as it's associated to the conflict between Northern Sudan and Southern Sudan. Can we come to a conclusion where Northern Sudan wants to help Southern Sudan and Southern Sudan wants to help Northern Sudan to become a strong Sudanese people? It's the same thing with North Korea and South Korea. Can we develop a curriculum where people don't separate based on color or uniform? Like the Goths had a uniform, the Picts had a uniform. The American Revolution, the War of Independence, the English had a red uniform, the Americans had a blue uniform. Um, uh, the Civil War between the Yankees and the Confederates, one wore gray, the other wore navy blue. We use colors to separate ourselves and polarize into different colors. Another example of that is Crips and Bloods, or Democrats are blue and Republicans are red, or here in Canada, the Liberals are red and the Progressive Conservatives are red and blue, and the NDP is orange. So we have all these colors, and we're all dividing and polarizing and associating an anxiety to a verbose platform that's associated to the orange color of the NDP. So when we see the orange color of the NDP, we think of Jagmeet Singh, we think of Rachel Notley, we think of all these different NDPs Jack Layton, I think that was his name. He's the late Jack Layton. I can't remember what his name was. But when people see these colors, so if there's an anxiety that happens just from seeing a new Democratic Party color, or a red handkerchief or a blue handkerchief, um, we need to look at this as something that can be explained. Like, sure, we don't need a uniform. Sure, we don't need to all wear the same color and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, um, um, people group in colors. And we've been doing that not just as races, but as nations. And because we're doing that constantly, we're in a situation where we polarize regardless of race. So, what is racism if it's not a polarization of color? So, if it's not a polarization of color, and First Nations people and African American people and European American people and Asian American people, if I'm a Japanese person and I would rather hang out with a Korean than an American white person, that's racism. That's where you say that I would rather hang out with an Asian above a Caucasian or a European person, someone of European descent. So the problem is that we're in a situation where we need to isolate a curriculum. So it's obvious that the problem is that racism is humanity stressed out by the speed of light. Can we continue hating? Hate, there's a lot of anxiety that's attached to hate, and we don't see it, but it's there inside of us. Like, I'll give you an example. I have no problem saying that I have phallic envy or penis envy. I'm only an average sized man, but there's certain stereotypes out there that is associated to men, that are more hung than other men. So I'm like, wow, that means that I don't have the biggest penis, and the thing is that, being in that situation, there's racism associated to that, and there's something that's not being talked about in America when it comes to that. You see it on Family Guy, you see it on television shows and stuff like that. I heard this one guy say, on a Justin Bieber roast. He said something to Shaquille O'Neal doing a selfie with his penis. So it's like, this is part of our society, and a lot of people are resentful towards these laurels or these benefits that have been given or that have come into existence with certain people. And we're not talking about that stuff. And we're scared to talk about it because if we talk about it, we might not be good enough to procreate. Might not be good enough to have children because we're not well hung as men. So that's something we need to talk about. And a lot of people are feeling anxiety as it's associated to something so simple. It's hard to talk about, but it's racist too at the same time. So the medicine wheel, I talked about all that stuff. How with the red, there's the Cheyenne, so it's like there's a race of people, but there's many different peoples that are associated to red, yellow, black, and white. So these people were fighting in polarized uniforms before this, almost considering the wars of human history in North America. We're doing pretty good considering the way that Mosley and Napoleon fought, and the way that the Huns and the Khans fought, and the no, not the Khans, but the Huns and the Romans fought. Like, these people had similar appearances, but they had different fashion statements. So that's what I'm trying to say. So instead of listening rather than looking, and taking the time to digest the issues associated to race, we got to take the time to get to know each other. We need to take the time to listen and understand and focus and be determined to solve these problems with transparency and openness. We are so much more than politics, uniforms, and nations. Um, we need the rainbow warrior. We need the rainbow way of life. I know that it sounds gay and all that stuff, and it's not. That's nothing wrong with being gay, but a lot of men out there don't like it, and a lot of women out there don't like it. And I'm not into it myself, but I don't hate it, and I feel comfortable actually when I'm around an effeminate man. Like I feel like I don't have to keep my guard up and be aggressive and sarcastic and climb that mountain, boy. But yeah, it's so basically racism is humanity stressed out by the speed of light. And considering the polarizations that have happened with nations, politics, and races of people that use different fashion statements or uniforms to fight historically, we are doing great here in America comparatively to what has happened throughout the ages. Um, so, yeah, I hope that you realize that racism is humanity stressed out by the speed of light. And we don't need to polarize anymore into these colors. Now, I'm not going to be like Bulworth and say, let's all start fucking till we're all the same color. I'm not saying that because we do need diversity. We do need an ocean of variety in order to take on this universe. Because this universe requires as much diversity as possible. And the thing is that if we abandon our kids to a harbor of words that to use when they experience negativity in the light, then we're basically saying that we can't solve something as simple as loving your neighbor as yourself. If the most difficult thing on this planet has been loving your neighbor as yourself, then we're in trouble. We need to deal with this. We need to deal with loving our neighbor as ourselves. And yeah, basically what I'm trying to say with all of this is I love you. Thanks.